the Grind to Growth to Greatness podcast. The best and brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs, creators, athletes. We'll talk to them all, and we'll get the good, the bad, and the ugly on how they made it. Decoding the secrets of success. And now your host, Terry Barr.
Sometimes in life, we come across people that are just not like us. They do things that are amazing in their own rights, but they have a deeper purpose. And those are the things that we look at and we wonder, how did they do that? How did they get from where they were to where they are today? Those people inspire us. They inspire us to go forward. They inspire us to help other people. And they inspire us in our own lives to make big steps and small steps that are positive in our own life. This next pair that I just interviewed are just like those types of people. Brent and Kyle Pease are brothers that have crossed paths since childhood, but diverted in so many ways and have come back together to do some amazing things. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation with a pair of brothers that love each other very much and are entwined in this journey that they've come so far. They're inspiring us all, and they're helping many, many people along the way. So enjoy our conversation with Brent and Kyle Pease. I have Brent and Kyle Pease here, and they're going to tell us about their family, where you grew up. Tell me when all this started, and a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm the oldest brother, and there's three boys. Kyle has a twin brother, Evan. And when they were born in 1985, there was conversations about the challenges of raising a child with a disability, the short and difficult life that Kyle would live. And, that was never anything that my parents considered. They, simply decided to include Kyle in everything and would do everything they could to give him a full life. And, that's exactly what they did. I mean, they included Kyle in everything we did. He didn't stay home when we went on vacation. He came. And whether that was, whitewater rafting or climbing literal mountains or skiing, we did it all together. And that was, really just a wonderful lesson of inclusion that, Kyle and I continue to carry forward today.
It's an amazing story, quite frankly. And I don't know if we got there yet, but Kyle has cerebral palsy, so that's been a struggle his entire life. But like you said, and if you are interested in the full story of the Pease family, you need to go and buy their book. It's called Beyond the Finish, and it's lays all their whole life out, and it's really an interesting read, and I've enjoyed it so far. But I read a little bit about mom and dad. Obviously, I think dad was an engineer or is an engineer. Mom was the strong one of the family that kept everything positive. And I know in your book, Kyle, you talked about how mom was somewhat of your hero, and she always kept you upbeat during some of the tough times. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, she would always, my number was cheerleader. She would always she would never take no for answer for me. So whether it was find the school system for something that I needed, or whether it was creating a baseball league where I could participate with all my, where she would really
Yeah, I read that. I thought that's incredible. And we've got some connections. I live in Pennsylvania, so I'm well aware of the Challenger League that you mentioned there. And that ended up not working out for whatever reason. They wouldn't accept that down in the Georgia area. And so they went, and your mom was I guess the old school where all the guys were in charge or whatever, but she said that's not going to work for us, so she went and started a new league. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. very much so. You know, my mom taught me where along with Evan, the game of baseball. He taught us the old school and keeping score, and then scorebook and all of that. So we got the love of the game from mom. And she was definitely is still is a go-getter today.
That's amazing. So, Brent, I read a lot about obviously your life and growing up, and it wasn't a straight line from A to B in a lot of ways. But the one thing that kind of ran through your story was your love for your brothers, your love for your parents. You guys had a very inclusive, obviously we've talked a very inclusive family, but you guys did everything together from the beginning. I just wondered your mindset as a young man growing up, knowing Kyle that he had something that was a little different than others, but it didn't really affect anybody. It seemed like you guys were just all into, hey, let's go do this, ramming around with each other. You know, he was included in everything. Tell me your mindset as a young person, how you went from, hey, just a normal brother to realizing he's not like everybody else, but it didn't matter to you.
Yeah, we probably should have asked you before we started if you have an explicit rating on your podcast, so you'll have to let us know before we really get deep into some stories here.
Yeah, so I want you to tell your story, and you tell it in your words. My goal here is to get your story in your words, and I'm okay with whatever you throw out there. I will rate it. I'll rate it the way it needs to be rated. So
absolutely. Well, Kyle and I will say things to each other as only brothers can say. So I should check with that. But you know, I think what we've learned as a family, and especially the boys, me and Evan and Kyle, have learned as adults, is that, you know, what happened to Kyle is it had a profound impact on everybody in our family. And, you know, as an older brother, it originally to me felt like this tragedy. And it was this, you know, horrible, and because it is. Sure. I mean, I had one brother who I could throw a baseball with and one brother who I could throw a baseball at. And, you know, that was hard. And the story we tell often is that the house we grew up in had a living room that had 2 steps to get down to the living room. And that seems like no big deal if you asked us to describe our house. But for a child that needs help getting around and needs a wheelchair, that means that when all the kids are over playing in the living room and they all go running up to go outside, Kyle has to wait at the bottom of the stairs until somebody would get him. And so those types of experiences really just shaped how I felt about Kyle, or more specifically, how I wanted to help Kyle. And so as an older brother, I often took on that role of protecting him, of including him, of helping him. It sometimes meant that we were ganging up on Evan because Kyle was the baby brother in a lot of ways. And so that was just how it was for me. And I just always wanted Kyle to be part of those experiences, whatever they may be. And I think as we became adults, there was, as we may get to in the book, there was some hard party years. And that meant that I was taking Kyle to the bar with me. But we both discovered, you know, what we always saw in ourselves was this inner athlete. We both just always believed we're athletes. And we finally found something that allowed us to both tap into that in the endurance sports world. So that experience is what has shaped so much of what we do today.
And I could feel that in the book. And if I go backwards a little bit in the book, there was a place where you talked about, there was, you know, mom and dad, they took it upon themselves that they were going to be there for Kyle. They weren't going to hold you responsible, you and your brother Evan, even though they loved having you guys, you know, they were going to take the responsibility. And I guess one day they were in bed early in the morning and they heard something was going on, and they went to Kyle's room and he was not in his bed, and you had taken him downstairs to ram around like 27 steps. And I thought that must have been one of those defining moments that mom and dad said, you know, we've got support of the kids. They love each other and they're going to do everything they can to include him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they saw that so early, and as a parent now today, I can imagine how comforting that was. I mean, there was times there was screaming and crying, and I'm sure my mom can tell you countless stories of the times we gave her a hard time or challenged her as kids can challenge their parents. But I think overall, that was the experience that my parents saw, was the way that we looked out for each other and the way that we included each other in life.
And Kyle, I wanted to hear, you know, it's easy to say, okay, Kyle's included in this, his brothers love him, but how did you feel as a young person, knowing that mom and dad were always there for you, your brothers, even though they didn't coddle you? I think that was one of the words that you used in the book. They didn't coddle me. You know, they really, for lack of a better term, they beat up on me and they included me in the roughhousing. How did you feel about that in your mind when you were that age and growing up with your brothers?
Well, you know, I think I wouldn't want it any other way. But I want to be included in everything that they did. It would be a little modified, but I wanted to live a normal life and make it occur. And I think that my life was going to be different. And I'll be lying to you, Terry, to say that some days are better than others, and I wish that I could do more for myself. And then again, I think about what we have created with the Kyle Pease Foundation and what mom and dad gave to me, along with the support of my brothers. And it's truly a gift. And I just am along for the ride and love what we do.
Yeah, in reading your book, Kyle, you said that you'd have conversations with Brent when you're on the bike, especially, and you're running and doing the things that you do, and we'll get into the triathlons and the races that you folks do. But I remember you said along the way, one of the things that you kind of questioned, gosh, I wish I could stand up and walk. And I think Brent, and I'm going to get this wrong, but Brent said, well, maybe you don't wish that because you don't know what you're missing or something like that. Is that something that you struggle with even today, with saying, I wish I could stand up and go do this for myself? I'm curious what your daily struggles are mentally with something like that.
Oh yeah, it's a daily, it's a grind. Like your podcast said, but yeah, there are days that I wish that I could do more to myself. But then I'm reminded of what me and Fred have done. You know, without Fred, none of this is possible. And without me, you know, together we made the team better and we make it stronger. So that's why I try to focus on my hardest days and my weakest days. Is, you know, the positives that come from both of our parents, with the idea to focus on your PMA, your positive mental attitude, and focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do.
And Brett, I'd like to kind of back up a little bit. I know that during high school, and I'll try to connect all the dots here, but during high school, maybe you weren't the most straight arrow as some of the other guys, and got into a little bit of drinking and some other things. And as your life unfolded through college and after college, and you started to rediscover life without some of that, could you talk about that period of time in your life and how Kyle eventually became this focus for you that really kind of redirected you? I call it the straight and narrow, whatever you want to call it. But could you talk about that time of your life? Because I hear Kyle say, without Brent, I wouldn't be doing this. But some part of me believes without Kyle, you may not have been doing this either. And I'm just curious how you think through that.
Well, you know, high school was fine. I mean, I would say I was not the best student, but I was certainly a good citizen. And it was really college. And Kyle actually shared a quote on his Instagram the other day, pressure is a privilege. And I think being Kyle's brother, in the way that I chose to be his brother, that by the time I was a young adult, 19, 20, 21 years old, that I had this pressure to be this good person that I had been, the person that, I was the one who, parents would say to their kids, why can't you be more like Brent? Because I was, here I am skipping out on a Friday night to hang out with Kyle, or here I am driving Kyle and having, people help me carry him into the house so he could come hang out with people and have a regular high school experience. And, all of a sudden, I think that started to get to me, and it was like, wait a second, I'm going to go experience life. I'm going to go live life. And I was in a place where, where we're all trying to grow up and discover ourselves and separate and create our own identity. And up until that point, I had this pressure of being, Kyle's brother, of being a Pease. And I ran far from that. And, as I've started to kind of, refocus and dedicate myself to just living a better life, healthier, a more straight and narrow path, that was when Kyle was, wanting to do the same things. And it created this conversation between us about, Kyle being an athlete. And that was how this whole thing started to grow.
And that's really interesting. I have two sons, and they're both adults. And my oldest son, I think, lived in the shadows of his younger brother. His younger brother was, had some successes in life athletically, and it's just come about that he's decided that he needs to, take ownership of his life and to try to create an environment to be healthy in himself. And it sounds like that's what you tried to do, because he walked away from life, let's call it, or walked away from responsibility, or out of that shadow in an unhealthy way, I suppose. And so as you got through college, Brent, you went to Florida State, you went there, you graduated at some point after you got out there. And then how long was it before you kind of came back in? I don't say you ever left, but came back into Kyle's life in a more health-minded way, positive way.
Probably 4 years.
Great.
So 26, 27. So just 4 years after college. And I actually remember, I was angry Florida State fan on a Thursday night football game one time. They showed me sitting in the stands.
Oh, boy.
Boston College scored a last-second touchdown, and all my friends stood up and left, and I had quite a few, and I just sat there dumbfounded, staring, and there I was, plastered all over the television. But what I remember most about that is getting on the airplane and not wanting to go, and just like knowing this was not what I wanted to keep doing. And it wasn't too long after that football season where I did my first triathlon, and that was this eye-opening experience of just finding something to dedicate yourself to. And I'd had that for such a long time at an ages where most people don't. And at 7 years old, dedicating myself to helping Kyle. At 6 years old, making extra time for Kyle. That's not something teenagers do. They're finding their own way in the world, not us necessarily. And so this sport created the catalyst and created the conversation, for us to be able to follow this path together.
Yeah, and that's again, that's so amazing, and the story gets better and better during that period of time, right before you did that triathlon, that first triathlon by yourself. I think you met I don't know if she's your wife, but you met Erica, and she was a catalyst in hanging on and really seeing the positive in you. Can you tell me a little bit about that point in time with her and how she was a catalyst for you?
Well, it was kind of right at that transition, and that, I think she believed in the potential, and that what I could be as a partner, as a father, because it was what I was as a brother. Even if, there were a few nights that, you know, Kyle was right there with us and we were all out having a good time, I was also training for my first triathlon and would take, you know, the opportunity to go to bed early on a Friday so I could get up and ride my bike. And it all kind of happened. I mean, I think now, you know, shortly thereafter of those experiences, I think I looked at them as this, you know, huge, profound awakening. But as I get older, I see that so often with young men and women that are getting to that phase of life where they want more out of it. And not only did I want more, I wanted to experience that with Kyle and to include him. I mean, at that time, Kyle was a greeter at Publix, and I don't know a lot of people that is their goal in life, to be a greeter at a grocery store. And I think it's wonderful that there's inclusive employers out there, that people that want to include Kyle, but I knew there was so much more for him, as much as there was for me too.
So you were, at that point, you were training for, I believe it was Louisville, is that right? You're training for Louisville. Kyle, I know that in the book you talked about wanting to go down there with your buddy to support him, but that you really didn't know a lot about triathlons. Can you tell me a little bit about that first experience? It's in the book, obviously, but tell me about that experience and what turned that light bulb on for you.
For sure, I think for one, I would get proud of myself that I was able to book my own hotel room and enjoy the Louisville nightlife and all that. But what I saw on the next day from Brett and all the other competitors was my life. I thought my life flashed before my eyes, and I get new growing up, you know, watching baseball and all the different games and stuff that I always wanted to be an athlete. And maybe this was the opportunity to be an athlete with Brett. So we sat down after the 12-hour day, and I asked him to people in wheelchairs to Ironman. And he said,
that was an interesting part of the book, Kyle, because it said you talked about wanting so badly to ask him after he'd had this big, long triathlete day, you know, with this first triathlon, and you just couldn't wait. He said, I had to ask him at least that question, and he immediately said yes to you. And that must have been I don't know. Tell me about that moment when your brother said, absolutely, let's go. That must have been a game changer for you, Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like, well, first of all, I felt like I had my own one-on-one press conference with my brother. And I would annoy the media and make it searching for more. Brett was so tired that he would always reply with the one word answer. So I kept digging, and then the last question was a one word answer. We couldn't, that's how really this journey was formed.
It's really how it began, I guess, huh? Brett, on this same note, in this same moment, obviously you finished this 12-hour ordeal. Was it surprising when he asked you if someone in a wheelchair could do? I mean, what was your immediate thought? Of course you said yes, but was that something you had ever considered before?
No, not at all. I mean, this was really a personal journey at first. You know, the way to include Kyle at that moment was to have him there. I mean, he'd been at thousands of sporting experiences of mine growing up, just like as I had been at many of his growing up, but we never did them together. And I think that was kind of my immediate thought of like, I mean, there's so many different things out there that adults do for recreation.
Sure.
today. I mean, they play basketball games, they play golf, they have all these different things they do, but endurance sports are pretty unique in that, you know, when Kyle and I compete in triathlon, we start on the same day as the professionals. We finish on the same day as the professionals, and we experience the exact same thing they're going through. I mean, what golfer can say they played a round with Tiger Woods in competitive round? What guy playing a pickup basketball game gets to go down to Madison Square Garden and play in an NBA game? It doesn't happen. And so I think that was kind of the immediate thing is, yes, we can do this together. I mean, I didn't know how. I didn't even know where to start in that moment, but there was this, you know, reaction because it'd been such a special experience. I mean, one of the most emotional experiences of my life, crossing that finish line for my first Ironman. Why would I not want Kyle to experience that, even if he had been bothering me with questions for the last 10 or 15 minutes? I was in on helping.
And so I guess that's, I mean, inevitably that's where this journey really started with the foundation, I guess. Maybe not immediately, but that decision you both made to do that together. And then Kyle, I know that throughout the book you talked about, and there's a couple quotes that I wrote down that I took out. And one of them was, becoming an Ironman is not and never will be for all about me and Brent. It's about our foundation and the people who we are hoping to inspire. So the people who see what we are all about to accomplish and believe that anything is possible through our efforts. And I know that it took a while to get to that point, but tell me about that. I mean, tell me about your starting your journey was difficult and it was expensive and you didn't know how you were going to do it, but tell me how your physical journey started and how you approach saying, okay, we want to do an Ironman together. How do we do this? Tell me about that thought process.
Well, that was the thing, is that we always wanted to do it together. And so, you know, as soon as we started figuring out the equipment and figuring out how to get the equipment and pay for it, then it was, let's get out and do this. You know, so we scheduled training sessions, we scheduled races to go practice. And then we started to realize, and maybe we realize now looking back on it, but those were what the experience was really all about. I mean, racing, you know, we might get into it today, but when we race an Ironman, there's a line cutoff. And in our very first Ironman, we barely made that line cutoff. In our last Ironman, we only made it by like 11 minutes, you know, so it's this really challenging day, but we try to make it we try to reduce the amount of adversity we have to experience through our preparation. And that's where we get to have a lot of fun. I mean, I remember asking Kyle questions at an Ironman one time where he was like, "Are you serious, man? We're in the middle of a race." So it really, and then it was all of a sudden, as I mentioned, like I've watched Kyle play all these sports growing up. He's watched me, but now we were experiencing it together. We were out on a bike ride together, just hanging out as brothers. We were running in the Georgia heat, both dripping sweat. I was looking for something before we got on here today, and I was showing us picture on Google popped up of us from 2014, where we're both covered in sweat. Kyle wearing a cotton t-shirt that you can see how wet it is from dripping sweat in the Georgia heat. And that's where it was so much fun. Like it just figuring things out as we went and enjoying every experience we got to have
and
together.
For those that you don't know, of course, I wasn't, I mean, I know what Ironman is. I have a couple friends that have done them, acquaintances that have done them. I've never dove into the details, but you don't just get to go out there and run the race for 12 hours. You have to make time cutoffs, and you have to make a certain standard to stay in it. And then I know that eventually doing this thing together, your big goal became, well, we want to go to Kona. I mean, that's where the championship is, the Ironman championship is. And to do that, you've got to do some pretty astounding things. So tell me about the journey from, hey, let's get started. Let's have fun together. Let's learn how to do this together. Let's really, Kyle, tell me about how that came about, making it into the Kona Championships and what that adventure was like for you.
Well, yeah, so we did our first Ironman in Wisconsin in 2013. And then after we did it, I was like, okay, we're ready for Kona.
That's awesome.
So, both Brett and I, one of Brett was writing the letter to the Ironman every week, telling them why we needed to be included in Kona. And finally, about a year after that, they wrote us back and they said, in a very nice way, please stop writing us every week. You're very annoying. And so then we get started building our resume. We did a couple more Ironman throughout the years. And in 2017, 2018, the summer of 18, we just went out to do a race by ourselves in North Carolina. And it turned out that's what they gave us on the ticket to go to Hawaii.
Yeah, I think we thought, do something inspirational, get your opportunity. What we realized is, like anybody else, whatever your chosen profession may be, or whatever you're doing, there's a process to get there. And finishing one Ironman, they were like, that's wonderful. 60,000 people a year finish an Ironman, and there's a million stories in that pool of people. So we did another one, and they said, that's great. 60,000 people did it, and then I think what we started to finally realize was, instead of chasing this one goal, this one outcome, that you should just enjoy what we're getting to experience. We should enjoy what we're building with the Kyle Pease Foundation. And what actually happened, I don't know that Kyle's heard this before or remembers. In 2017, we did our third Ironman, and that actually put us back on the Ironman's radar, where they were like, oh, the Pease brothers, they've been racing with us for the last 6 years, and they've been trying to get into this Hawaiian Ironman, but we didn't ask again. But we had built up this resume. We had embraced their brand, but personally and with our foundation, and it's all we worked on. We worked on getting better as athletes. We worked on pushing ourselves as business owners, and opened the door that when we went to this race in 2018, which ironically, neither of us really felt like we were all in on it. We knew that we didn't do this race in 2018. If they call us for Kona, we wouldn't be able to go, because we can't qualify. And so we have to validate our being on the start line by showing that we finished a race, within a year. And so we were like, we'll just go do one more. It's June, and then we'll enjoy the summer together, because there's no way we're doing Hawaii. And maybe in 2019 we'll get in. And the finish line, they were standing, our dad was there, holding a garbage bag. And we didn't know what it was at the time. And the announcer was on the microphone and says, Brent and Kyle, as you know, the 40th anniversary of the Ironman in Hawaii, and we want you to inspire us for the next 40 years. You're going to Kona. And then my dad, as the tears were streaming down his face, pulls out this giant ticket, that Pease Brothers Hawaii in 2018. And it's just like, I'll send you the video after. It's just on my social media, but Kyle has this look of pure shock, and I start crying, because I see mine crying, and like, man, everybody who's listening right now, they've experienced something like this in life, where you work so hard for this thing, and then one day somebody looks at you and says, "Hey, great job!" Like,
it's like validation of everything that you've done up to then. Yeah,
exactly. It was really one of the most special moments that maybe we don't talk about enough, because that moment was 7 years of hard work. The next 17 weeks to get to Hawaii was really a celebration of what we had accomplished together, and the opportunity to, as Kyle said, to show that anything is possible.
Kyle, what were your thoughts in that moment when you pulled up to the finish line and they announced your name and they pulled that ticket out? Tell me your thoughts on that.
I like but then I would get so surprised. I would get in the moment that you don't realize what is really happening. So it took a couple hours to go back to the hotel. It let the news take in that we were doing it. And then it hit me all of a sudden. And I had a smile from ear to ear that cannot be taken away because we worked so incredibly hard to achieve that moment. And it will be a moment that we both will never forget.
You've asked a few questions today that remind me of this quote that Kyle talked about that kind of loosely says, you know, all my life I tried to avoid the struggles until I finally realized the struggles were my life. And I think that was us growing up. I think that was my parents, like navigating the ebbs and flows of raising a child with a disability. I think that was Kyle and I as young men, as professionals, trying to learn that you don't just get a key to the boardroom because you did one thing and you did it, you know, right out of the gate. You have to just be consistent and keep working and keep showing up, and you'll get that opportunity. And for everything we struggled, the other reason I thought of it is because everything we struggled through set us up for success in Kona. We had this playbook of every lesson we had learned, and a team of people to help us make sure that we learned from every single one of those and created the opportunity for the highest and most success in Hawaii.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, when we speak to different companies around the country, we always talk about embracing the stuff. But and I think that I live it out every day. It's part of my business in life. It embrace the stuff. But you know what? When you embrace it, it makes you stronger. You work on it. It becomes your backbone, you know? And we know no other way but to get back on the horse and keep chugging along, you know? And whenever obstacle may come, you know, we'll tackle it together with our love and our determination and our great to persevere through any obstacle that may be on the race course or may be off on the course.
Yeah, I guess reading your story and talking about your story and listening to some of your social media, and I guess I came to the conclusion, and even the reason that I found you was somewhat interesting. I wanted to do something hard in my life as a result of listening to Jesse Itzler and some of the things he does, and I enjoy him to a certain extent, and one of the doing a masogi and those kinds of things. And I was an athlete in high school and college and gotten away from that and so on and so forth. But there's a point, I look at your story, and there's a point where your personal experiences are so much bigger than yourselves. And you've created this foundation, and you've given so many parents and individuals hope for a life that can be filled with purpose. And I just wonder, you know, how that in itself makes you both feel that every day you wake up, people look at your story. I looked at your story and I thought, what an incredible statement they're making with their lives and how they're encouraging people on a daily basis. Do you ever think about those kinds of things in that detail?
I don't know that we think about it intentionally, but there's these moments that happen to both of us. You know, a parent, you know, crying while they hold Kyle's hand and tell him how special it was to watch their child run off for the first time. You know, we had a mom at a race this year. It was about a 2-hour race. And she told us it's the longest she's ever been away from her child. And you really cannot imagine what that must be like. But I think the one moment for both of us that really seared it into our mind is that, you know, this whole time of grinding towards Hawaii, and not getting in, the foundation was continuing to grow, and we kept spending more and more energy on it. You know, Kyle and I used to race like 15 to 20 times a year. And by the time the Kona year rolled around, we might have been doing 6 to 10 a year, because there was just more for us to do to support. And then for 17 weeks, we only focused on ourselves and what we were doing in Hawaii. And we both started to feel a little guilty. You know, we had this whole organization that we had built, and here we were in Hawaii by our, you know, just as our own athletes. And this young man, Dale, sent Kyle a text, and he said, when you're in the world championships, we're all in the world championships, you know. And that's like, and that one's never actually got me like that. We told that story at lunch. That's when it just hits you. Like, you're not just here for you. You're here because of everybody else. You know, you're here because they believe in us. We're here because we believe in them. And it's like I said, it's not that we did this one great thing and they said, come to Hawaii. It's that we've lived with purpose and intentionality that every person with a disability should be included in life. And we try really hard to live that out. And Dale, the night before the race, whether he realizes it or not, said something that positive energy and that positive force, we were talking about it on the course, about what people in Atlanta might be doing, how they might be watching us 6 hours behind, you know, to try and see us finish this thing that we had talked about for 7 years. So we do think about it. We probably should think about it more, because I turned 40 last year. Kyle turns 40 next year. And, you know, we're getting to a place where doing this 15, 20 times a year is just, it's not where we are physically, mentally. Where we are is supporting each other as brothers and supporting a whole lot of other people just like Kyle that just want to be included.
So tell me a little bit about how Evan fits into your story. Evan came up lots and lots and lots through everything I read and what have you. I feel like he's kind of an unsung part of this story, but he's also an athlete. And I know up until recently, maybe he was running, doing things himself. But talk to me a little bit about your brother, Evan, Kyle, and what he means to you, and how he's been a part of your life in these last few years.
For sure, Evan is way cooler than me and Brad put together. You know, he's one of the guys that nobody hears about, but we taught people racing. And he's very, very smart, very, his sense of humor is one of a kind in itself. I think that for me, we have a special connection through how close we are. And, you know, he moved to New York with his wife and there's a son. And I'm so proud of him. Just, you know, we have a group chat, the three of us, and he enjoyed running the New York City Marathon this year to support KPF. And every time he tells us how much money he had to raise, I always say, I'm so proud of you. Because I am. I'm just proud of him and the life that he had built. It's very inspiring.
That's amazing. Brent, how does your younger brother Evan fit into your life? And tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, what he means to you.
Well, the bond of brothers is a special one, and you work together at things. You work hard to support each other, and then you hit each other, and the next day it's like nothing happened. And Evan, you know, I mean, I guess the core memory with Evan and Kyle was playing baseball in our backyard, where Kyle was dressed as an umpire sitting behind one of the old pitchback nets, and Evan and I were, you know, pelting baseballs and tennis balls at each other and trying to hit them over the fence. And that's what I remember, is this playful exuberance between all of us. And as Kyle mentioned, Evan's got quite the sense of humor, and that playfulness still lives on. And I think it keeps us both grounded, and it keeps us both humble. And it just makes us all proud to see where everybody's gotten to. So I miss getting to play with Evan in the backyard. You know, he raced with us in the very beginning, and maybe with him doing the New York City Marathon, we'll get a return to the three brothers doing something together. But for now, I'm just thankful that we had, all three of us had each other to get us to where we are today.
Tell me about your future endeavors as far as from a racing standpoint. I don't know how, I know you've had some successes getting into Kona. I know you had some setbacks getting into some other races. What's the temperature environment like for race assisted kind of things like that? Is there something that, you know, Boston, I know that Boston, you have to go under your own power across the line, and the New York City. I mean, is there an opportunity there that's waiting to happen? Is that something that you shoot for?
It's much better than when we first started. I would say that right here in Atlanta, the Atlanta Track Club, I don't know that there's an organization in the world globally that's trying to include people. I mean, when DE and I became a big part of the conversation 4 years ago, the Track Club, like many companies, said, we're all in on this. But what I've seen is them live up to it. You know, New York has 5 opportunities for our type of racing. Boston has 10. The Atlanta Track Club, at their premier event, the Peachtree Road Race, anybody who asks to race, they will make an accommodation for. They had a young man probably in 2021, I think, who was sip and puff chair. So if you were, those are the ones like Christopher Reeve, the former, right? I mean, he powered himself by blowing on a straw for 6.2 miles, and they let him race, where I know many race organizers that would not. But what I would say is that overall, the improvement, the opportunities have improved.
Yeah, and that wasn't always the case, though, was it? I mean, you guys had some, you know, they turned you down a couple times, I think, for the Peachtree, did they not? Yeah,
they did. But I would say now that the Track Club is one of our greatest partners, you know, so our patience and working through that process. But, you know, we used to sign up for races and we had to explain ourselves. We had to justify it. I mean, one of the stories is in the book was a guy said, sure, you can race, but there's a 60-minute course time limit. And we were both like, well, we'll smash that and then prove you wrong. But that guy has random wheelchairs signing up every year, because after the race, he added a wheelchair button to his website. And, you know, so that's happening around the country. I mean, the London Marathon, as late as 2019, basically said, we don't have to let you in. They don't have a robust ADA act.
That's true.
We do here in the United States. So they basically said, no. Well, guess who had opportunities now for people like Kyle to race? The London Marathon. So there is a path to do this stuff, and we continue to pursue it. We still haven't raced overseas. Kyle definitely wants to do that, and so that'll have to happen one day. But we are going back to Hawaii this year, so we'll be racing Hawaii, which we're very excited about. We're doing it with 3 board members. So we get to experience that magical island one more time. And we've got a pretty cool,
that's very cool. So as far as the foundation is concerned, it sounds like you've made some inroads in, you know, throughout the country, along with other people, I'm sure. I know, I guess the Hoyts were the first ones to really put a stamp on that. Do you guys have a relationship with them, or is that something that
we do?
Do you?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. They were actually the first people we reached out to back in 2010. And I still have an email they sent me with all the list of possible equipment choices that we could utilize. And I actually just emailed their CEO, who's one of Dick Hoyt's kids, Russ. Emailed him today because I just saw their name pop up as a sponsor of a very cool race in Massachusetts. So, they blazed a trail for people like Kyle and I to be able to continue to carry that torch.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's good stuff. Kyle, what's in the future for you and the foundation? I know you're doing a lot in the foundation. I've seen lots of speaking engagements, things like that. I know you're doing public speaking now. What do you see for the future of your foundation?
I would love to take it globally. Where I think we're still a little bit away from that, but I would love to take KPF globally and then explore it to other people around the world and show them what is possible.
Yeah. Terry, you know, there's something funny because I'm the executive director of the foundation, so we have a really wonderful thing where my younger brother gets to tell me what his vision is.
He gets
I'm like, man, you come in here and roll up your sleeves, you do work, but he does.
Yeah,
he does a lot of work here. But I think what's really cool that we're doing today is that the inclusion is extending beyond the finish. I mean, the title of our book was really also a vision that we had, that the race was just the beginning. And so we've now got 6 employees with disabilities that work for the Kyle Pease Foundation that are doing meaningful work here. We're going to hire 2 more before the end of the year to grow that workforce. We are working on building a fund that can create lasting impact to employees with disabilities for their life beyond the workforce. And so it continues to expand, and hopefully that movement, as Kyle said, you know, just like any snowball rolling downhill, it can pick up momentum and size. And maybe we'll have to figure out if I can take the foundation across the seas as
that's awesome. So I usually ask kind of some closing questions.
I love
you love those, by the way. And I'd love to hear your both your answers on this, and either one can go first. I don't care. If you had the attention of the world for 5 minutes, what advice would you give them?
Man, that's a great question. I would say to slow down, enjoy the company that you surround yourself with, and focus on the good. You know, there's a lot of bad going on right now, but focus on the hope that you give to your community. And I think, you know, hope leads to your purpose. That's why I tell.
Yeah, that's great.
Just to join your community and give it the purpose there. And leave your community better than you saw it 5 seconds ago.
Brent?
You know, there's I can't top that, but I'm gonna give one that actually it kind of came out recently for me, which is we'll see. And it's from an old Buddhist proverb or Greek proverb or wherever you heard it, but maybe I'll use our story to kind of show the world, you know, the way I would look at it. You know, when Kyle was born with a disability, everybody probably said to my parents, how horrible, what a tragedy. And they may have said, we'll see. And then as they watched 3 boys love each other and support each other, everybody would say how wonderful these children and how they look after each other. And somebody might say, we'll see. And, you know, when I ran off the path and was causing trouble and you know, doing things, people would say that poor Brent, he really used to be such a great kid. And everybody said, we'll see. And here we are today, and everybody says, you guys are so wonderful, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And I'd say, we'll see. And so, you know, you don't know what these things mean in the moment. And so just keep moving, because you'll get a chance to see if you do.
And you never know the impact that you're going to have on somebody's life.
Yeah.
And that's clearly evident in our story, what Brett has given to me through anything. So you just never know.
Well, I've spent my entire career, and I've had 3 different careers, but I've spent my entire career on the other side of a table, listening to people's stories, listening to their journeys, and never getting them on paper or never putting them on film. And the reason I even do this is because I find things that are interesting to me that have an impact on me and give me some sort of purpose adjustment, or give me some sort of reason to pop out of bed and to talk about things. And I just want to tell you how much of an impact, and I don't have anybody in my life that has any special needs or anything like you folks are going through on a daily basis. And Kyle, anything that you struggle with on a daily basis. But I can tell you, you've made a dramatic impact with the way you live your lives and how you approach what you do. And so I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what we'll see in the future. And I just really want to thank you for taking the time. I know it's, you've told the story 100 times, and I appreciate you telling it 101. And I hope that my listeners and the people that watch my podcast get something out of it, is at least what I've gotten out of it, because it's been such an honor to have you on my show. And I look forward to seeing what's in store for you in the future.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Grind to Growth to Greatness podcast. Our passion is to talk to the brightest entrepreneurs, CEOs, creators, athletes, anyone who's made it, and dive into their struggles, their successes, and their secrets. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Grind to Growth to Greatness. See you next time.